This video is going to be very different from the normal, I guess, video game related videos that I've made lately. Um, I guess I had been wanting to make something like this. I wasn't sure if I should, I was like, oh, maybe I'll make a separate YouTube. But I've had this same gamer tag literally since I was a teenager. It was originally given to me by a buddy of mine back in the days when AOL was still a thing. So in case you want to know how old that gamer tag is, that I go by Infamous, it's pretty old. Back in the days. So if you type in red pill on YouTube or in Google, you'll come across a wide variety of videos that discuss I guess women's behavior, how quote unquote, if you're an alpha male, how to gain women. I think a lot of the information that is put out in YouTube and for guys nowadays, especially because women are very promiscuous, men are equally promiscuous. The divorce rate is shit in America. And I guess I had wanted to put out some kind of a video like this. I had been thinking about it for a while, about the whole sleep around mentality. There's some YouTubers that put out information about there's some dudes that put out information about don't get married, pump and dump women. There's some people that like promote the fuck these hoes to sleep sort of mentality, and I kind of get it. I guess my early life as a young man was growing up in the church. I grew up in a church for I think about first 20 some odd years of my life. I ended up leaving the church because I didn't have the same sort of beliefs anymore. Just from, I guess, for the particular church that I was going to, I no longer believed the same way. Decided to leave, kind of do my own thing as a man. And then I started interacting, much more with women into my later 20s. I was probably, when I was in my earlier 20s, I wanted to get married, have a family, etc. But I wanted to be stable, had to, get a career, etc. I ran a business when I was younger, and then eventually went back to college, got a degree, work now at as a nurse in a hospital, and then I also do my own private job because I missed having my own business. In any event, I would say as a young man who has probably slept with much more than your average man. I think once I was one of those, like the people, like they describe those young women that, they're like the churchgoers and, daddy's keeping them on the straight and narrow. And then the moment they go to college, they just fuck every guy in the college. I guess that kind of was me when I lived on my own. Instead of just getting married, settling down, having a family, I was a single man living in Manhattan. I still live in the city. Single. I moved when I was 31, maybe 32. I was, earning a six-figure salary. I'm fairly tall. Was in really good shape at the time. I'm still in good shape. I'm probably a lot bigger. Was much leaner when I moved to the city. And what I would say is that a lot of the experiences that I guess is promoted both in the media and in YouTube, about the type of women that come across, and I have come across many. And I guess looking back at my former Christian self, what I would say is that the words of the Apostle Paul are true. The women that most of these men, right, most of the red pill men, and what we're seeing today promoted in society is what is found in the Bible at 2 Timothy 3:16, where it says, in referring to men, it says, they are the kind who worm their way into homes and gain control over gullible women. It says, who are loaded down with sins and are swayed by all kinds of evil desires. And I would say that is very true of the mentality that is preached within, you know, red pill and in certain like Mgtow men going their own way channels about, you know, sleeping around. What sort of women are you going to get yourself involved with? And I would say the vast majority of them are going to be this type of women, women who are gullible, easily manipulated, women who are loaded down with various sorts of vices in their lives, and who are swayed by all kinds of evil desires that are promoted within the society that we are existing in. And I would say, looking back as a man who has partaken in that sort of lifestyle, I'd say for the past, let's just say 10 years, probably a little less, probably more like 8 years, where I went around just, you know, one night stands, you know, happy hour in the city. I live literally, you know, down the block from all the pubs, all the bars. Like, if all I want to do is go out and have drinks, I'd walk down to the bar, you know, meet a girl, you know, what they refer to, you know, some YouTubers refer to as, you know, the logistics of sex, right? You always want to be nearby to a place where you can take a woman to have sex, which is kind of why, I guess originally I moved to the city, was to partake in the nightlife, to go out and meet women. I guess all the things that I learned in the church life to avoid, I now, you know, when I first moved to the city at around, you know, my early 30s, started partaking in heavily. And so looking back, I guess to other young men, maybe men who are in their, you know, late teens or early 20s, you know, taking advice, you know, there's other people out there on YouTube that maybe you follow, right? You hear of women who, you know, who cheat, and, you know, the divorce rate is ridiculous, and women initiate most divorces. But I think that there are a lot of things that are taught about in the scriptures that I stopped practicing that would be beneficial for most men. For example, if you're a guy, you know, they tell you, you know, don't, you know, Mgtow, don't cohabitate, don't have kids, don't get married, you know, don't have any sort of relationships. You know, the Bible teaches, you know, quite the other, you know, where it says, you know, two is better than one. You know, where one gets cold, you know, two can keep themselves warm. You know, if someone breaks in, you know, one can't put up as good as a fight as two, you know, things of that nature. And it refers to, you know, a threefold cord cannot be easily broken. And of course, that's referring to, you know, having God in your relationship, which I think is probably devoid in most people's relationships now, which is what is probably had been leading to the detriment of the society that we have. That, you know, most men left the church probably like in the early 40s and 50s. Women at the time were still, you know, the vast majority of the churchgoers, even to this day. And as a result, you know, it's very ironic, you know, that all red pill Mgtow believe that women only adapt to the environment that we as men put them in. But then we subsequently also say that women bring absolutely nothing to the table in terms of relationships that a man needs, outside of just sex and childbirth, right? And maybe some companionship. And then I include myself in that, but then we turn around and say, well, you know, women will use sex to, I guess, garner a relationship. Because I think on the inside, most women know that men want sex, and that's one of the easiest things that they can use to have a relationship with a man. But then Red Pill and Mgtow also teach that if a woman isn't sleeping with you, well, then she's definitely sleeping with somebody else. So it's a woman that you wouldn't, like, if she's making you wait sort of experience, then, you know, that's a person, you know, she's obviously sleeping with someone else and you're just being a beta, right? That's kind of the mentality that is being taught, that, you know, if you're an alpha, you know, she's not making you wait, which I understand the mentality. Back when I was busy dating, I wouldn't even bother going out with a woman if I wasn't sleeping with her on the first night, because I was meeting so many women at the time, especially through things like POF and Tinder, especially in the city. Like I was literally meeting a woman every day, going out to happy hours, sometimes meeting 2 or 3 women, sleeping with 2 or 3 women in a day. Came to the point where I think living that lifestyle, it just got me sick, I guess morally sick, living that way, where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna catch a disease or something. So I stopped living that way, and I try to have more longer term relationships, and I mean like in quotes, which was like, relationships that lasted weeks. The reality is that if you live this type of lifestyle where you're not having meaningful relationships, you're just sleeping around. Problem is, you never will be able to have a relationship, because every woman, you'll look at every single woman the same. If she's not sleeping with you, then either she views you as a beta, or she's sleeping around. Or if all you do is sleep around with every single woman on the first date, and I am guilty of this, then you'll think naturally, well, if she's fucking me on the first date, then she fucks everybody else on the first date. And that's one of the things that I would say is kind of like ruining to a person's mind when you live that way. And it's not just what people say, well, it's okay if I individually live that way, you can choose to live a different way. But the reality is, if you look at it this way, if every man on your block lived that way, lived red pill aware, only pumped and dump, how would the women and what would your block look like? What would your city look like in terms of geographic, right? What would your demographics? What would the number of single mothers look like? What would the morality in a city like that look like? Now, what if your whole state lived that way? And what if your whole region? What if the whole country? The reality is that while you may individually choose to live your life either morally or amorally, the reality is that living in a society, we all affect one another. The Apostle Paul made that very clear when he said, it takes only a little leaven to ferment a whole lump of dough, right? It only takes a little bit of yeast to basically make the dough rise. And so a little bit of that bad lifestyle can infect an entire block, and it can affect the entire neighborhood. It can infect a whole person. And I guess I just wanted to make a video discussing this because it is very popular in our time. It is very popular in our time where men are walking away from relationships primarily because of, the route the government is going, and divorce and alimony and child support, etc. But I also think that the vast majority of the men who are getting themselves caught in these sort of affairs, getting involved with women that are like this. If you look at a lot of like famous, men who are famous, who like, you hear of different famous men that are getting divorced and paying, X amount of alimony. And I look at them and I look at the women that they're with, and it's like, well, would you have gotten that woman if you were not rich? Right? Would that same woman be just attracted to you for what you offer as a person, your sexual attraction, the way you look, the way you act, etc.? How you are as a person. Would that person still be with you if you weren't that wealthy? And if they weren't, then you probably really should not be with that person. That person is not with you for, I guess, righteous reasons. They're not with you for, the right motives. And most of these people are getting themselves involved with women who are easily gullible. And the original text in the book of, Paul talked about that exact same thing. That in the Garden of Eden, the woman was thoroughly deceived, but the man made a choice. And made a choice to allow himself to do what was wrong. And I think that's what's happening. And nowadays, we have a lot of women who are easily gullible. You have many women who are loaded down with sins, swayed by many of the various bad desires that are being perpetrated in the environment that we see ourselves in today. And as a result, more and more men are just basically getting involved with women like this.